What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Scott. Welcome back to Fudge Muppet, and today we have a special Elder Scrolls 6 discussion for you. This is a series we've thought of reviving that we used to do a long time ago when we thought Elder Scrolls 6 might be coming out sooner than we thought, but obviously that wasn't the case. But this is a series where we sort of just talk about our ideas for an Elder Scrolls 6 and the things that we'd like to see. It's sort of like a wish list series almost. Also some things that we'd like to be taken out or put back in, or just maybe just ideas that other people have, and we sort of talk about them. And today, in that instance, that's true. We on Twitter asked, like, what Elder Scrolls 6 discussions would you like to see? And someone asked about hybrid races and was sort of saying that's what they'd like to see. And we indulged this idea for a bit. We had a bit of a think about it and sort of tried to make it work in our heads. But look, I'm going to be straight up honest. I don't think they'll ever put hybrid races. Like, the likelihood of Bethesda doing that is incredibly unlikely. There is a book in lore called Notes on Racial Phylogeny, which is all explaining how that the race is taken on from the mother. So if you have an orc and an imperial, the orc being the mother and an imperial being the father, the offspring will be an orc. But then you've also got other things in the lore, such as Bretons, which actually came from the interbreeding of elves and men, and that sort of created this race of Bretons. So if the racial phylogeny book was correct, then Bretons shouldn't be possible at all. So I think that's just the book is just a bit of a nod to the gameplay mechanics, and it's just to basically say that we don't have to make lots of half races everywhere, because essentially it's a huge effort. It's like, and you'll hear in some of the complications that we bring up here, but like if you were combining Argonians and Khajiit, A, what does that even look like? But B, the other thing is, how do you mix their abilities? Like, does this half Khajiit thing have water breathing? Or does it have night eye? It becomes an abomination, essentially. Like, if you were to look at, Orc and High Elf mixed, it's like, do they have Berserker Rage? Do they have this bonus to enchanting? Or do they not? Do they have 50 extra magicka? Or it's basically a very complicated thing. It just adds a whole level of complications that you sort of don't need. If anything, I'd rather, this is just my personal opinion, but I'd rather they take the 10 races that they have now and add more diversity into them, allowing wood elves to be quicker or better with a bow, or orcs to be default stronger. Like this, they sort of have their natural genetic affinities, if you know what I'm saying. So if you add in hybrid races to the mix, it gets incredibly complex. Like, I mean, even just think about the character models. How do you do an Argonian with an orc without making it look spastic? How do you make a high elf with a wood elf? Like, what height is that? Do you just sort of like cut it halfway in between, or do you get some 7-foot wood elf? Or it's a bit complicated, you know what I'm saying? And then what happens if you just get a high elf and an imperial, which is basically what Bretons were? I mean, they shared the Nedic ancestors, which were in High Rock, and they sort of interbred with what were basically high elves. So then do you just get Bretons when you mix those two races? And then do you get the magic resistance and stuff like that? Or do you not? Do you get a share of the abilities from the Imperial Father and the High Elf Mother? So you get the Highborn ability and, I don't know, the Imperial Luck or whatever it was called. It just doesn't really work out. In lore-wise, it makes sense. Obviously, hybrid races makes sense, at least between men and elves. The Argonians and Khajiits are sort of another story, and they could easily just leave them out of the hybrid choices available. But it also just makes character models complicated, NPCs complicated, because then if you're the only hybrid race in all of Elder Scrolls, it's kind of silly, you know? You want to see this high elf mixed with a Nord or whatever, and they do say that, but because of the racial phylogeny book, they just sort of say like, oh, I was a high elf, my mother was a high elf, but my father was a Nord or something. So it still makes sense by following that basic rule, even though it sort of screws with the whole lore and the whole Breton thing, but forget about that for a second. At the end of the day, it becomes very, very hard to do the hybrid races, and I think Bethesda, in terms of what they should do and how much they've got their hands filled with other things that they should prioritize, hybrid races are at the end of a huge laundry list of things that they should work on. And just work on the races themselves first, like making them more diverse and more unique in each respect. Then plus there's all kinds of other stuff like, skills, perks, class, magic, story, consequence, choices. There's all these other things to deal with as well. So hybrid races is a nice little fantasy. They will never do it. Bethesda, I'd be so surprised if they ever did it. And I kind of really... I just don't think it needs it. So that's my thoughts on the Elder Scrolls 6 idea of putting in hybrid races. It's not really my cup of tea. I can understand the appeal, and there is precedent for it in the lore, but then there's also precedent against it with that book, The Racial Phylogeny. So it's sort of a bit of a, I don't know, whatever happens. So anyways, that's my thoughts on hybrid races. I'm Scott from Fudge Muppet, and I'll see you next time.